On a desolate stretch of railroad track, an unimaginable act of cruelty plays out. Lily Parker, a 6-year-old girl, is bound to the cold metal rails by thick ropes, her small body strapped securely to her wheelchair. Her wide blue eyes fill with tears as she helplessly watches Victor Hayes, his expensive suit billowing in the wind, walk away with a sense of satisfaction in his stride. Her voice, hoarse from earlier screams, can no longer reach the air. In the distance, the sound of an oncoming train grows louder. The earth beneath her begins to tremble, counting down the seconds of her life. Then, a bark shatters the tense silence. Max, her loyal German shepherd, races across the field, his muscles rippling as he sprints toward her with all the desperation in the world. His amber eyes lock with hers, conveying a silent promise. The train's whistle blares, the engineer spotting the child in peril but unable to stop in time. As the locomotive charges forward, Max leaps towards Lily, determined to save her. Don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now, let's continue the story. Willow Creek Ranch. Sprawled across 200 acres of Montana's rich soil, its rolling pastures dotted with cattle grazing lazily under the sun, while towering pine trees mark the distant mountain ridges. The main house, a 2-story log structure with a welcoming front porch, had stood strong for 3 generations of the Parker family, enduring the harsh winters and unforgiving summers. Much like the people who called it home, Robert Parker inherited the ranch from his father, who had inherited it from his father before him. At 42, the lines around his eyes were etched deeper from years of squinting under the sun, his hands roughened from honest, hard work. After losing his wife to cancer 3 years ago, he threw himself into caring for the ranch and his daughter. Lily Parker, although bound to a wheelchair due to a spinal condition, was nothing short of extraordinary. Her sharp, observant mind often unnerved adults, and though her honey blonde hair and bright blue eyes were reminiscent of her mother's, it was her stubborn spirit and quiet intelligence that truly defined her. One spring morning, as Lily sat by the kitchen window, watching her faithful companion, Max, pace nervously, she spoke up. "Dad, Max says there's something wrong with the fence in the south pasture." Robert smiled softly as he poured his coffee. "That dog understands more English than most people I know." Max, a 90-pound German shepherd with a keen intellect, had come to them 4 years ago as a frightened puppy abandoned near the property line. With Lily's patient care, he grew into a magnificent animal, his amber eyes assessing everything with near-human comprehension. The bond between the girl and the dog was something extraordinary. Max seemed to anticipate Lily's every need and knew how to help her transition from her wheelchair to the bed with ease. Lily never saw her wheelchair as a barrier. With Max by her side, she explored every part of the ranch that her wheels could reach. When the terrain became rough, she would command her father or the ranch hands from her chair, guiding the operations with meticulous precision. Her favorite place was the eastern hill, where wildflowers carpeted the land in spring, and the air was always filled with the scent of pine dot. Though Robert's life had taken an unexpected turn, with the absence of his wife and the challenges of raising Lily, he had found purpose and meaning. The Parker family legacy would continue, perhaps in ways unforeseen by his ancestors, but none of them could have predicted the threat to that legacy, or the remarkable bravery it would take to preserve it. The gravel driveway at Willow Creek Ranch was a sound known well before any visitors arrived, dust swirling behind the sleek black Cadillac Escalade that made its way toward the main house one Tuesday morning in early June. Robert, wiping his hands on a rag after a day of repairs, stepped onto the porch. "Dad, someone's coming," Lily called from inside, wheeling herself onto the porch beside him. Max trotted up from his spot in the shade, taking his place protectively by Lily's wheelchair. The car came to a stop and a tall man in his mid-40s stepped out, his expensive tailored suit starkly out of place on the working ranch. His movements were measured, his smile rehearsed as he approached the porch. "Mr. Parker, Victor Hayes. We spoke on the phone last week." Robert extended his hand, nodding. "I remember. You mentioned interest in the area." Hayes' eyes shifted. To Lily, his smile widening. "And this must be your daughter." He crouched slightly, speaking with a condescending tone reserved for children. "Hello there, sweetheart." Max growled low, causing Hayes to straighten quickly. "Sorry about that," Robert said, calming the dog with a hand on his head. "He's protective." "Smart dog," Hayes responded with a thin smile. "Recognizes quality." Mrs. Thompson, their housekeeper, appeared in the doorway with a tray of lemonade. "Lily, honey, why don't you come inside and help me with this?" she said. Gently dot with a reluctant nod, Lily wheeled herself inside, Max following closely, giving Hayes one last suspicious glance. "Beautiful property you have here, Mr. Parker," Hayes remarked as he surveyed the ranch. "Been in your family long?" "3 generations," Robert replied proudly. "My grandfather started with 50 acres. We're up to 200 now," Robert added. "Impressive legacy. One that could be enhanced with the right investment," Hayes continued, leaning in slightly. Before Robert could respond, a second vehicle approached a modest Ford sedan, parking behind. The Escalade. Out stepped a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, holding a leather portfolio. "Ah, perfect timing," Hayes said. "This is Alan Morris, our legal counsel. He's brought the preliminary paperwork." As Mrs. Thompson served lemonade, Hayes began outlining his company's interest in the region. "This entire area is sitting on substantial oil deposits," he said. "The geological surveys are quite promising." "Oil?" Robert asked, surprised. "On my land?" "Potentially significant reserves," Morris added, adjusting his glasses. "Consolidated is prepared to make a very generous offer for the mineral rights." "We're talking life-changing sums, Mr. Parker," Hayes said, his voice smooth. "7 figures, potentially." From the kitchen door, Lily watched, her eyes narrowing as she sensed something off about Hayes. Max sat beside her, his body unnaturally still, ears perked forward. "Think about what this could mean for your daughter," Hayes continued, leaning in. "The best medical treatment, specialists, a future secured." "Lily's already getting excellent care," Robert interrupted, his voice tight. "She's fine." Hayes raised his hands in a gesture of apology. "Of course, I didn't mean to offend. I simply meant that with this kind of financial security, you could provide more opportunities for her education, the best specialists, anything she could need." Robert's gaze softened a little. "I appreciate your offer, Mr. Hayes, but this ranch is more than just land to us. It's home." Hayes leaned back, his smile widening. "We're only interested in what's beneath the surface. Your daily operations wouldn't be impacted much." "Much?" Robert questioned. Morris cleared his throat, uncomfortable. "Well, there would be some disruption during exploration and extraction, but we're committed to minimizing it." Hayes produced a glossy brochure from his jacket. "We're at the forefront of environmentally responsible development," he said smoothly. "Our reclamation practices are industry-leading." As Lily quietly wheeled herself away from the door, she felt an unease settle deep in her chest. Something about Hayes felt false, his smile too wide, his words too smooth. It reminded her of the coyotes that sometimes prowled the ranch, all teeth and hunger hidden beneath a guise of friendly curiosity. "Max," she whispered as she reached the kitchen, "something's not right." Max whined softly, pressing his nose into her hand. When Hayes and Morris left 2 hours later, They left behind a thick folder of documents for Robert to review. "Take your time," Hayes had said, "but don't take too long. Opportunities like this always attract competition." Later that night, after Lily had been tucked into bed, Robert sat at the kitchen table, reviewing the documents in silence. Mrs. Thompson placed a cup of coffee beside him. "What are you thinking, Robert?" she asked quietly. He sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "I'm thinking about Lily, about her future. After I'm gone, that child will inherit this ranch and run it better than any office," Mrs. Thompson stated confidently. "Don't let that smooth-talking city man fill your head with doubts." Robert managed a small smile. "It's a lot of money, Clara. The kind of money that could ensure Lily has everything she needs for the rest of her life. She needs this land," Mrs. Thompson replied firmly. "It's in her blood, same as yours." Upstairs, Lily lay awake. Max curled at the foot of her bed. She couldn't shake the feeling that something important was happening, something that threatened the only home she'd ever known. The next morning, Hayes returned with Morris and another man introduced as their environmental assessment specialist. Robert took them on a tour of the property while Lily watched from the porch, frustrated at being left behind. "I need to know what they're saying, Max," she told her companion. The German Shepherd tilted his head, ears forward as if considering her words. "If only you could follow them and tell me." When Robert returned with the visitors, his expression was thoughtful. Hayes's smile seemed wider, more confident. "We'll be in touch next week with the final paperwork," Hayes said as they prepared to leave. "I think you'll be very pleased with the terms, Mr. Parker." After they departed, Robert found Lily in her room drawing in her sketchbook. "What do you think of Mr. Hayes, sweetheart?" he asked, sitting on the edge of her bed. Lily considered the question carefully. "Max doesn't like him," Robert chuckled. "And you always trust Max's judgment." "Always," she replied without hesitation. "Dogs know things we don't, Dad." "Well, Mr. Hayes is offering us a lot of money for the oil under our land," Robert explained. "Money that could help us help you in many ways." Lily frowned. "Would we have to leave the ranch?" No, Robert assured her. "We'd stay right here." "There would just be some equipment, some people working in parts of the property." "I don't think we should do it," Lily said firmly. "This is our home. It's perfect the way it is." Robert kissed the top of her head. "Nothing's decided yet, Pumpkin. I'm just thinking about our options." That night, Lily woke to the sound of Max growling. Softly by her window, rising to her elbows, she saw lights moving across the south pasture. Flashlights, she realized, carried by figures too distant to identify. "What are they doing out there, Max?" she whispered. The German Shepherd's growl deepened, his body rigid with alertness. The next morning, Lily told her father about the lights. But Robert dismissed her concerns. "Probably just the Anderson boys checking their hunting traps. They leased the parcel adjoining our south line." But Lily wasn't convinced, especially when she spotted fresh tire tracks cutting across their rarely used south access road. Something was happening, and somehow she felt it was connected to Victor Hayes and his interest in their land. Her suspicions deepened 3 days later when Hayes returned unexpectedly, this time without Morris, but accompanied by 2 men introduced as geological surveyors. Robert was showing them around the property when Lily decided to investigate Hayes's car parked near the house with the windows partially opened out with Mrs. Thompson busy in the garden. Lily wheeled herself to the sleek black vehicle, Max at her side. "Keep watch," she whispered to the dog, who immediately took up a vigilant position, ears alert for any approaching foots. Standing as best she could while leaning on her wheelchair, Lil appeared through the window. On the passenger seat lay an open leather portfolio similar to the one Morris had carried. Clearly visible was a map, a detailed rendering of Willow Creek Ranch with sections highlighted in red and annotated with numbers and symbols Shedden understand. More disturbing was a document beneath it partially visible. The words Special Acceleration Clause and Default Triggers jumped out at her along with a paragraph about involuntary transfer of ownership. Hearing voice approaching, Lily quickly settled back in her wheelchair and moved away from the car, her heart racing. Max rejoined her, his warm presence calming her fears. "Something's wrong, Max," she whispered as they retreated to the safety of the front porch. "I think Mr. Hayes is trying to trick Dad." That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Lily lay awake making plans. She needed to see those documents properly, needed to understand what Hayes was really offering her father. Somehow Shay had to get into Robert's office where he kept the folder Hayes had left out with determination born of love for her home and family. Lily Parker made a decision that would set in motion events none of them could have anticipated. Events that would test the extraordinary bond between a girl and her dog and ultimately lead them both to a fateful confrontation on railroad tracks that had stood unused for decades at the edge of their property. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed midnight as Lily carefully pushed her bedroom door open. She had waited until the house fell silent, until her father's soft snores drifted from his room and Mrs. Thompson had retired to her cottage behind the main house. Max rose from his bed in the corner, instantly alert, his nails clicking softly on the hardwood floor as he approached her wheelchair. "We have to be very quiet," Lily whispered, reaching down to stroke his head. The German shepherd's amber eyes seemed to gleam with understanding in the dim light filtering through her curtains. Navigating the hallway presented the first challenge. The old ranch house had settled over generations, its wooden floors prone to creaking under the slightest pressure. Lily knew each troublesome board by heart. Knowledge gained from years off midnight adventures to the kitchen for cookies or to the living room windows to watch summer thunderstorms roll across the valley. Tonight, however, her destination was her father's office. Robert Parker kept it locked when he wasn't home, but rarely secured it at night. The important documents Hayes had left were stored in there, along with the ranch's financial records and deed, items Robert had always told her were the paper heart of Willow Creek. Max moved ahead of Hira as if scouting their path. When he reached a particularly noisy floorboard, he stopped and looked back, prompting Lily to navigate around it. Their teamwork was seamless, born of years spent as inseparable companions. The office door stood slightly ajar, a sliver of moonlight cutting across the threshold. Lily's heart pounded as she pushed it open wider, wincing at the soft creak of the hinges. She paused, listening for any disturbance in her father's breathing down the hall, then proceeded when the house remained silent. Robert's desk dominated the small room, a massive oak piece that had belonged to her grandfather. The documents from Hayes were stacked neatly in a leather folder at its center, exactly where her father had left them after reviewing them again before dinner. Lily wheeled herself forward, but stopped short in frustration. The desk was too high, and the folder lay beyond her reach. She bit her lip, considering her options. On previous adventures, Max had retrieved items for her, but paper documents would likely be damaged in his mouth. "I need to see what's in that folder, Max," she whispered, "but I can't reach it." The German shepherd tilted his head, assessing the situation. After a moment, he patted around the desk, disappearing from view. Lily heard the soft scrape of movement, then watched in amazement as her father's office chair began to roll out from behind the desk, pushed by Max's powerful body. "You're brilliant," she whispered excitedly. With the chair positioned beside her wheelchair, Lily carefully transferred herself, a maneuver she'd practiced countless times. From this higher position, she could reach the desk's surface. Pulling the leather folder toward her, she opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were contracts, maps, and surveys. Dozens of pages filled with legal terminology far beyond her 6-year-old vocabulary, but certain phrases caught her attention. Default provisions, accelerated ownership transfer, penalties for non-compliance. One document outlined extraction rights and property seizure guidelines. Most concerning was a map similar to the one she'd glimpsed in Hayes's car. Willow Creek Ranch had been divided into sections, with the largest portion containing their house, barns, and primigrazing land marked. With a bold red X scrolled in the margin was a note. Phase 1 extraction, 30 days post-signature. A chill ran down Lily's spine. This wasn't about paying them for oil rights. It was about taking their land out. Her suspicions deepened when she discovered a thin folder tucked inside the main one. It contained newspaper clippings about other ranches in neighboring counties, properties that had been sold to resource development campaigns over the past 2 years. One headline stood out: Clayton family evicted after contract dispute with Consolidated Resources. Sound of a floorboard creaking in the hallway froze Lily in place. Mac's ears shot forward, his body tensing. Hastily, she returned the documents to their original position, then transferred back to her wheelchair as quietly as possible. Max quickly pushed the office chair back into place just as footsteps approached. The door. Lily's heart hammered in her chest. There was nowhere to hide. The footsteps paused outside and she held her breath, her hand resting on Max's head to keep him still. Lily. Her father's voice was thick with sleep as he pushed the door. Open fully. What are you doing in here, sweetheart? Her mind raced for a plausible explanation. I had a bad dream. Dad, I came looking for you. Robert's face softened with concern. He knelt beside her wheelchair. What was your dream about? I dreamed someone was taking our home away, she said. The truth wrapped in the guise of a nightmare. They were making us leave Willow Creek forever. Robert gathered her into a hug. Nobody's taking our home, Pumpkin. This ranch has been in our family for generations, and it'll be yours someday. That's a promise. Lily clung to him, wishing she could make him understand the threat hidden in innocent-looking documents on his desk. Dad, I don't think Mr. Hayes is telling the truth about what he wants. Robert pulled back, studying her face in the moonlight. What makes you say that? Max doesn't trust him, she replied, knowing her father would dismiss her if she admitted to snooping. And I heard him talking to that other man. They said something about taking control of the property. A frown creased Robert's forehead. You must have misunderstood, Lily. Mr. Hayes is offering to pay us for the oil under our land, not to buy the ranch itself. But it's late, he interrupted gently. We can talk more in the morning if you're still worried. Let's get you back to bed. As Robert wheeled her back to her room, Lily caught Max's gaze. The German Shepherd's expression seemed troubled, as if he shared her concerns and frustration at not being able to communicate them effectively. Once her father had tucked her in and returned to his own room, Lily whispered into the darkness. We have to find a way to show Dad what they're really planning. Max. We need proof. Max settled his head on the edge of Herb, his warm breath against her hand, a silent promise of support. The next morning brought fresh worry. Hayes called to announce he would be returning that afternoon with the final contract for Roberts. Signature. My board has approved an even more generous offer than we discussed, he told Robert over the phone, his voice carrying from the kitchen to where Lily sat on the porch. I think you'll be very pleased. Lily spent the morning trying to formulate a plan. If her father signed those papers, she was certain they would lose everything. But what could a 6-year-old girl in a wheelchair do against sophisticated businessmen? Illegal documents? The answer came to her while watching Mrs. Thompson take photographs of wild flowers for her church's newsletter. The housekeeper's digital camera was simple enough for Lily to operate. She does it many times to capture images of Max's antics or particularly beautiful sunsets from her favorite hillside. "Mrs. Thompson, could I borrow your camera today?" Lily asked. "I want to take pictures of Max for Dad's birthday album." The housekeeper smiled. "INDULGENTL, why dot, of course, sweetheart. Just be careful with it." With the camera secured in the small bag attached to her wheelchair, Lily's plan began to take shape. She needed to document what she'd seen in the contracts, create evidence that Evan, her father, couldn't dismiss. But how to access the documents again? Robert had taken the folder with him to consult the ranch's accountant in town, and Hayes would be bringing the final version in person that afternoon. Her opportunity came sooner than expected. Shortly before noon, Hayes' black Escalade appeared on the driveway, arriving hours ahead of schedule. Through the living room window, Lily watched. As he emerged, followed by Morris and a third man she hadn't seen before. A burly individual whose suit seemed stretched tight across his shoulders. "Mr. Hayes?" Mrs. Thompson greeted them at the door, surprise evident in her voice. "We weren't expecting you until 4. Mr. Parker is in town." "That's quite all right," Hayes replied smoothly. "We finished our other business early. Would you mind if we waited for him? We have some preliminary surveys to review while we're here." Mrs. Thompson hesitantly invited them in, offering refreshments, which Hayes declined. "Actually, if it's not too much trouble, we'd like to set up in Mr. Parker's office. These documents are rather confidential." From her position in the adjacent room, Lily felt a surge of alarm. What were they doing with documents in her father's office? She wheeled herself into the hallway just as Mrs. Thompson was leading them toward the office. "Hello, Mr. Hayes," Lily called, forcing a smile. Max immediately appeared at her side, his posture stiff with alertness. Hayes turned, his expression momentarily started before composing into a practiced smile. "Well, hello there, young lady. Keeping an eye on the ranch while your father's away." "Always," Lily replied. "Max and I don't miss much." Something flickered in Hayes' eyes. Annoyance, perhaps, or concern. "I'm sure you don't," he said, his tone condescending. "Smart girl like you probably notices everything." The burly man shifted impatiently. Hayes introduced him as Mr. Garrett, our security consultant. Though Lily thought looked more like the fighters she sometimes glimpsed on the television when her father watched boxing matches. "We have some boring grown-up work, too." "Do now," Hayes said dismissively. "Perhaps you could show your dog some new tricks while we wait for your father." Lily held his gaze, refusing to be intimidated. "Max already knows all the important tricks, Mr. Hayes, like protecting our home." The German shepherd gave a low growl. As if emphasizing her point, Hayes' smile tightened, and he quickly ushered his associates into the office. Closing the door firmly behind them, Mrs. Thompson returned to the kitchen, muttering about unexpected visitors disrupting her lunch preparations. Lily immediately wheeled herself to the office door, pressing her ear against it. Max stood beside her, equally intent in the muffled voices within. "Perfect opportunity with Parker away," she heard Hayes say. "Garrett, check the south property line. Again, make sure those survey markers are in the right positions." "What about the old railroad easement?" Morris asked. "Did you confirm ownership?" "Lapsed back to the property decades ago," Hayes replied. "But once we invoke Article 7 after the default trigger, it won't matter. We'll control everything within the marked boundaries. And if Parker won't sign," Hayes' laugh was cold. "Everyone signs eventually, especially single fathers with special needs children and mounting medical bills. Speaking of which, did you plant those documents where I told you?" Lily couldn't hear the response as they lowered their voice further. She looked at Max, her young face set with determination. "We need to see what they're doing, boy." The office had a large window overlooking the side yard. If she could position herself beneath it without being seen, perhaps she could peek inside or even photograph wait-for documents they were discussing. With Max beside her, Lily quietly made her way out the side door and around to the office window. Years of navigating Therench in her wheelchair had made her adept at moving across the packed earth and gravel. The window was partially open to catch the summer breeze. Another stroke of luck. Positioning herself beneath it against the wall where she wouldn't be visible from inside, Lily could hear their conversation more clearly. Now, Onsethi's revised survey markers are accepted by the county recorder. This entire section falls under the extraction zone. Hayes was saying Parker's signature on this contract is essentially signing away his mineral rights for pennies on the dollar. And the acceleration clauses kick in as soon as we begin preliminary drilling, which will damage his water table, Morris added, triggering the default provision when he can't maintain proper agricultural operations. Exactly, Hayes confirmed. Within 6 months, Consolidated Resources will own Willow Creek Ranch outright, and the old man will have no legal recourse. Lily's hand trembled as she raised the camera, angling it carefully above Fewendowsel to capture the document spread across her father's desk. She pressed the shutter button repeatedly, hoping at least some of the images would be clear enough to serve as evidence. She had just lowered the camera when a shadow fell across her. Looking up, she found herself staring into the cold eyes of Mr. Garrett, who had apparently exited the office to patrol the grounds. "Well, well," he said, his voice a growly rumble. "What do we have here?" Max immediately placed himself between Lily and the man, his teeth bared in warning. Garrett took a step back, his hand moving inside his jacket. "Call off your dog, kid," he ordered. "Max." "It's okay," Lily said, though her voice shook. The German Shepherd didn't relax his protective stance, but he stopped growling. Garrett reached down and snatched the camera from her lap. "Let's see what you've been up to, shall we?" "That's Mrs. Thompson's camera," Lily protested. "Give it back." The commotion brought Hayes and Morris hurrying outside. Hayes took in the situation at a glance, his face darkening with anger when Garrett showed him the camera's display screen. "It seems we have a little spy," Hayes said, his pleasant facade evaporating. "Did your father put you up to this, or are you just naturally sneaky?" "I know what you're doing," Lily replied, summoning all her courage. "You're trying to steal our ranch with tricks and lies. And I'm going to tell me Dad everything." Hayes crouched to her level, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Listen carefully, little girl. Your father is in serious financial trouble. More than you know. These medical bills of yours aren't cheap, and this ranch hasn't turned a profit in years. He needs this deal, and I won't let a nosy child ruin it." "You're lying," Lily insisted, though fear knotted her stomach. "Am I?" Hayes smiled coldly. "Ask him about the second mortgage he took out last year. Ask him about the specialist consultations in Denver, Heckledon. Afford. Why do you think he's even considering our offer?" Tears stung Lily's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "My dad would never sell our home. Never. Everyone has a price," Hayes replied, straightening. "Fortunately for us, your father's circumstances have made his quite reasonable." He handed the camera to Morris. "Remove the memory card and bring it to me. Then return this to wherever it belongs." As Morris hurried to comply, Hayes fixed Lily with a stern look. "If you value your father's well-being, you'll keep quiet about this little incident. The stress of financial ruin isn't good for a man his age, especially one with a disabled child to care for." Max growled again, more threatening this time. Hayes stepped back wearily. "Control that animal," he snapped. "Unless you want to see what happens to dangerous dogs in this county." The threat against Max was more than Lily could bear. Leave him alone. "We're going inside now, and when my dad gets home, I'm telling him everything." Hayes' expression hardened. That would be a serious mistake, Lily. One that could have consequences for both you and your father. He glanced at his watch. I have a call to make. Think carefully about what I've said. As Hayes and Garrett returned to the office, Morris approached. With the camera, memory card removed. Here, he said awkwardly, placing it in Lily's lap. No harm done. But harm had been done. They had taken her evidence, threatened her dog, and worst of all, planted seeds of doubt about her father's financial situation. Was it true? Was Dad really in trouble because of her medical expenses? As she wheeled herself back toward the house, Max padding solemnly beside her, Lily fought against despair. Without theft photographs, it would be her word against Hayes, a 6-year-old girl versus a successful businessman. Who would her father believe? One thing was certain, Victor Hayes was more dangerous than she had initially thought, and he would stop. At nothing to get what he wanted, she needed a new plan. And quickly, before her father returned and signed away their future, Lily retreated to her room, her mind dressing with fragments of the conversation she'd overheard. Max followed closely, his protective instincts heightened by the confrontation. Once inside, she closed the door and leaned forward to bury her face in the German Shepherd's thick fur. What are we going to do, Max? She whispered. Dad will be home soon, and they'll make him sign those papers. Fettig whined softly, nudging her hand with his nose. Lily straightened in her wheelchair, wiping away tears with determined swipes of her small hands. Crying wouldn't solve anything. She needed to formulate a plan that would expose Hayes' scheme before it was too late. Her first idea was to call her father, but when she reached for the bedside phone, she discovered the line was dead. A glance at her father's old cell phone, which he'd given her for emergencies, showed no signal. This wasn't unusual at Willow Creek. The remote location often suffered from spotty service, but the timing couldn't have been worse. Looking out her bedroom window, Lily could see Hayes pacing on the front porch, engaged in what appeared to be an intense phone conversation. Morris and Garrett had positioned Ethemsville's near the driveway, effectively monitoring any approach to the house. They were clearly waiting for her father's return and ensuring she couldn't interfere. They've trapped us here, she murmured, her young mind grappling with the gravity of the situation. It wasn't just about Ferenc anymore. Hayes's threatening manner had convinced her that their safety might be at risk as well. Max barked suddenly, startling her. The German Shepherd was standing by her closet, pawing at the door. Lily wheeled over and opened it, revealing the old backpack she used for her overnight stays at the hospital. Inside was a spare change of clothes, her medication, and her heart leaped. Mrs. Thompson's old digital camera, the one she had replaced last Christmas but had given to Lily for her nature photography. Max, you're a genius, she exclaimed softly. The camera was basic but functional, and most importantly, Hayes and his men didn't know about it. God, if she could somehow get back to the office and photograph those documents. But Hayes and his associates were clearly on guard now. Getting near the office again would be nearly impossible. She needed another approach. Peering out the window once more, Lily noticed something that gave her pause. Hayes was pointing toward the old railroad tracks that ran along the eastern edge of their property, abandoned decades ago, but still maintained as a right-of-way. Garrett nodded. In response, then headed toward his vehicle. What interest could they possibly have in those old tracks? They hadn't been used since her grandfather's time. Then she remembered something from the conversation she'd overheard. What about the old railroad easement? Did you confirm ownership? The tracks might be crucial to Hayes's plan somehow, and if Garrett was headed in that direction, it might create the diversion she needed. A new plan began to form in Lily's mind. Dangerous, certainly, but perhaps their only hope. If she could reach Mr. Mitchell's house, just 2 miles down Fecounty Road, she could use his phone to call her father. Mr. Mitchell was the town's former surveyor and had helped Robert with property matters for years. He would understand the legal documents better than anyone. But how could she travel that distance in her wheelchair without being seen? The answer lay beside her, his amber eyes watching Herfus intently as if following her thoughts. "Max," she said quietly, "I think we need to go for a ride." Over the years, Max had been trained to assist Lily in countless ways, retrieving dropped items, opening doors, even helping her transfer between her wheelchair and bed. But what she was considering now went far beyond his usual duties. She'd seen videos of service dogs trained to care riders, though typically with specialized equipment they didn't possess. Her father's workshop might hold the solution. Robert had created various adaptations around the ranch to increase Lily's independence, ramps, modified tools, custom furniture. Among these innovations was a specially designed harness that allowed Max to pull Lily's wheelchair across rougher terrain when necessary. With a deep breath, Lily made her decision. "We need to get to the workshop without them seeing us." Fortunately, her bedroom connected to the back hallway, which led to the mudroom and offered a side exit toward the workshop and barns. If she timed it correctly, she might slip out while Hayes and his men were distracted at the front of the house. Lily packed the old digital camera, a bottle of water, and her emergency medication into a small bag. She scribbled a quick note for Mrs. Thompson. "Gone to Mr. Mitchell's for help. Don't tell the men in suits. Love, Lily." She tucked the note under her pillow where the housekeeper would find it when she came to check on her. Hopefully not before. Lily had gained a significant head start. Carefully opening her door, Lily listened for any movement in the house. She could hear Mrs. Thompson clattering dishes in the kitchen, likely preparing lunch. Hayes and Morris were still outside, their voices a distant murmur from the front porch. "Now's our chance," she whispered to Max, who moved silently ahead of her, seeming to understand the need for stealth. They navigated the hallway without incident, Lily's practiced hands guiding her wheelchair with minimal sound across the familiar floorboards. The mudroom door, thankfully, had been oiled recently and opened without a creak.